Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about the connection between evaluating chocolate, educating people about chocolate, and then judging chocolate. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting and the International Chocolate Awards. Before we begin, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping, which is to say, no matter where you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go into the live chat. If you're watching at LinkedIn or Facebook, you can go into the comments and you can get something on screen. If you've got a question or a comment, I will put it up on stage and I will do my best to answer it during the course of the episode. So that's number one in terms of housekeeping. Number two is to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. If you are not a member, you can go into the upper right-hand corner and click on the join button. There's always a free membership tier, has been since 2008 when I started the Chocolate Life. But if you do have the financial resources and you like what it is that I'm doing, there are premium membership tiers that start at as little as $5 a month or $42 a year for those of you who are also Douglas Adams fan. And just a quick note, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers on the channel. On YouTube. So if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please go there, subscribe, like this video, add a comment. It will do great things to spread the word about what it is that we're doing here. And I also want to point out that at some point during the episode, Erin Andrews of Indie Chocolate will be joining me, and we'll be for a live interview with respect to a bunch of the issues that I'm going to talk about today. But first, another reminder, which is that for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post on the Chocolate Life. And this is a run of show. It's going to talk about what it is that I'm doing and the order in which I'm going to do things, right? And that's important because the shows are 99% of the time not scripted. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to point out that there are two previous episodes in this series, episodes number 215 and 217. If you're watching this one for the first time, watch it and then go back and watch 215 and 217 to give you a lot more context about what it is that I'm going to be talking about today. And again, here, the focus is the IICCT and the International Chocolate Awards and their connections. A real quick history lesson, which is before there was the IICCT, before there was the IICA, there was 70%.com. And this is a screenshot of 70%.com from May of 2001, which is when it launched. And within a month, the Chocolate Life was also, chocophile.com was also online. So Martin and I have this connection, right, going back to 2001. And it turns out that Martin Christie is the through line, he is the connection between 70%.com, the International Chocolate Awards, and the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. There's a little bit more history about the timeline of when these were founded, who were co-founders, and things like that, right? But Maricel, Martin, and Monica went on to launch the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting in 2016, building on work on the neuropsychology of taste and computational neural networking done by colleague Alex Rast, who is not listed as a partner in IICCT. I first met Alex, I want to say, in 1998, 1999, on a Usenet forum, alt.rec.chocolate, and we started talking about rating systems for chocolate as far back as 1998 or 1999 or so. But what I want to say is that as of 2026, as of right now, there is no daylight between 70%.com, right? The International Institute for Chocolate and Cacao Tasting and the International Chocolate Awards. They're three different entities. I'm guessing there are at least 4 different websites. Let's leave it at that. But they're all owned and operated, or they are represented as being as owned as operated by the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. So just a quick bit of history about that. And I have known Martin, I don't think I met him in 2001, but I have been a judge at the International Chocolate Awards in the Americas round, at the Worlds round in London, and at the Peruvian round on 2 separate maybe 3 separate occasions in Lima, the last in 2017. So I do, and I've known Maricel since forever as well. So I do have, I've met Monica. I don't have quite the same, I don't have nearly the same connection with her. But I want to talk about what it is that I'm doing today, right? And why it is that I'm doing it. What are my motivations for doing this, okay? Is that in the previous 2 episodes that I mentioned, 215 and 217, I talked about the history and the evolution of classification systems used for evaluation, education, and especially competition judging, right? And focusing specifically on beer and wine and cheese and how they're connected with chocolate. What's really important to understand is those systems evolved over decades, if not centuries, from categorization systems heavily rooted in appellation. So the AOC and in France, the DOC, in Italy, things like PDOs, protected designation of origin, geographic indicators, those kinds of systems, right, which focus on geography, process, and ingredients. The recent evolution of classification systems into the arena of competition judging has taken place over a decade and has had the inputs of hundreds of thousands of individuals, members of academia and organizations. So the example that I cite is the evolution from Michael Jackson's 1977 World Guide to Beer to Fred Eckhart's Essentials of Beer Style in 1999 to the current beer judging certification program, right, which is a competition-oriented categorization and judging guidelines, right? And importantly, beer and wine and cheese have long histories of appreciation and connoisseurship that predate the Industrial Revolution, that the modern systems and the educational programs that are constructed around them were built on. So specialty chocolate emerged in the first half of the 1980s. It got a kickstart in the last half of the 1990s and became a cultural force in the early decade of the 2000s. Right? So the point is that systems for chocolate appreciation and connoisseurship are less than 20 years old. And unlike beer, wine, cheese, and other beverages and foods, there are no widely accepted standards for education and evaluation to support competition judging, right? What we do is we have one, right? We have the International Institute of Chocolate and Cacao Tasting, which came after the International Chocolate Awards. It's as close to what we have at present. And that connection between the IICCT and the ICA is central to my concern, right? Right? The IICCT is the most widely certified educational program, right? And the competition program with the most entries is the ICAs. They're both owned and operated, wholly owned and operated by the same 3 people. It makes sense to me, therefore, to take a critical peek under the hood and behind the curtains, right? Now, just because they are the most widely attended educational program and the most entered into judging program does not make them immune from criticism, right? For the purposes of maybe they can do better, right? And that is my motivation for all of this, right? Which is my goal is not to undermine the good work that they're doing, right? I've known Martin, Maricel, and Monica personally for a great deal of time. There are dozens, if not hundreds of people who are involved in the production of the tasting courses and ICA competitions annually. All these people are good people, and what they want to do is they want to move specialty chocolate forward. They want to grow the awareness, appreciation, and connoisseurship of specialty chocolate. I'm not trying to undermine any of that stuff, any of those efforts, and try to demean any of the people, right? However, my goal is to set and perhaps reset expectations toward the methodologies, curriculum, accreditation, instruction consistency, instruction consistency and quality, and judging criteria to help prospective IICCT students get the maximum value from the classes and to understand how the IICCT affects the ICAs. Right? So that's the point here. That's my motivation, right? And that's what I hope to achieve. Let me know if you got a question or a comment or anything like that. And by the way, for those of you who know Martin and Maricel and Monica, this is an open invitation, right? If there's Martin, Maricel, Monica, if there's anything you disagree or dislike or would like to push back against in anything that I have to say in this episode, reach out to me. And what I will do is I will schedule a live episode of Pod Safe Chocolate where we can have this discussion. You can tell me where you think I'm wrong, right? And where you think if any of the criticisms that I set forth are in fact applicable. So with that, stage 2. I don't normally write like huge quantities of notes for these episodes, but I did want to say that my original approach to this, when I posted on Facebook and the Well Tempered and other groups, and when I posted on LinkedIn for interviews, to interview students, so I wanted to get some firsthand comments, was different in emphasis from what it is that I'm going to be talking about today. But I got an email from Martin on the 5th of July. And Martin wrote to me, Clay, I edited these. If anybody wants for me to do screen captures of the entire emails, just so that you know that I'm not misrepresenting anything, I'll be happy to include those. And I'm going to take all of these notes that are here, and I'm going to put them in a PDF, and I will attach them. So you'll have, if you want to read these at length, you'll be able to read these at length. So you get an idea. So I'm going to read these relatively quickly. So Martin writes to me, I hope you're well. We saw your post in Well Tempered. Thanks for covering IICCT. So we're wondering what your approach is to this and what your aims are, if it's friendly or at least neutral. And so this is where my spidey senses started to tingle. So the partners in the IICCT are willing to talk to me, right? Only if I'm going to give them a friendly review, or at least a neutral review, right? And I'm going to do my best not to editorialize here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, here are some facts. Here are my observations, and you are free to do so. But I'm not going to tone police myself. I am not going to, going into this, decide that, oh, if there's something that maybe Martin, Maricel, or Monica find controversial, that I'm going to exclude it. I'm not going to do that. And I replied, I had to sit on this for about a week. Martin and Maricel, because Martin is writing to me and copying Maricel, right? Thanks for reaching out. As an independent journalist, I don't typically share my approach, aims, and topics with the entities that I intend to write about beforehand, right? Your offer to assist only, and I say at least that's my interpretation of your offer, if what I write is friendly or at least neutral, is one reason why. Right? I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond. Hey, you can respond, right? But you can respond to the story that I'm doing. I'm not going to give you the opportunity. Well, I'm not going to, number one, tone police and let you direct the story before I begin to write it, right? So he does offer, the ability. He does offer some help, and I say, I do have questions about the IICCT alumni community. If you have some recommendations, so if there are some people that you would like to recommend that I interview for this, and I did have private in-person interviews for this, I'm happy to have those recommendations, right? But I do have some non-alumni questions that I hope you will answer. Number one, right? So who owns the data entered into the personal profiles, right? IICCT or the person who enters the data? So it's an interesting question. So if you go to 70%.com, sign up for an account and start using the profiling system, who owns that data? Do you own the data, or are you giving it to the IICCT for them to use however? Number two, can members ask for a download of all of the personal profile data they have entered? So, if I've entered 27 personal profiles, how do I get my answers? How do we get my responses? Can I get it, right? Number three, can a member who decides to close their account request or demand that the IICC delete the personal data and all personal data, name and email address, right? and I suppose logs, which might have to do when I logged in and stuff like that, and all of the personal profile / review data that is in the database. So question, are there privacy and data usage policies that are linked to anywhere on the site? Okay. So Martin responds, regarding the data we keep, our policy is in line with EU GDPR, and the platform supports the tools for download, data deletion, and review of all the data in the database. Level 1 chocolate tasting in English is a recognized vocational specification in the UK, accredited by an organization called the FDQ, regulated by Ofqual, the UK government educational body for England and Wales. All right, we're required to follow their procedures, and there's a link to a page with policy documents that we can go to. My response is, I don't see any explicitly reference to any page. So when you go to this page here, right, the policy documents page, there's no link to their policy document saying that they're in line with the GDPR. So it doesn't exist, right? And I also point out, like they're inconsistent copyright notices and other stuff like that, just basic housekeeping details, right? And Martin writes back, please point me to the perfect system for comparison. You don't help your case as being collaborative or as an ally. So for me, this goes back to the framing. We're willing to help you if you're neutral or friendly, right? And he's really saying to me, you're not helping yourself when I'm going and pointing out, hey, there are some things people expect on a website and they're not there, right? And his response is right here, right? Which is, we are craft, not corporate. We are craft, not corporate, right? And I had to sit on that for a while. 3 or 4 days later, I said, all right, I had to sit with your response because one assertion left me gobsmacked. We are craft, not corporate. I cannot express how disappointed I am in that unfortunate justification of your position. That sentence explains the why for what I do and do not see in the materials you publish. And here's the point, right? Martin shoots back, right? We are proudly craft. Sometimes in the world, different people don't understand each other, which is a fact of life, and I guess a reason for so much conflict in the world, sadly. So all of a sudden, the back and forth between that Martin and I are having are placed on a level of world geopolitics, which is an escalation I don't understand. I don't really get where you're coming from with your point, but just to be really clear, we are proudly craft, not corporate, right? And keep in mind, we are craft, not corporate, right, is a response to what has checking up on an organization's data policy or copyright notices got to do with its contribution to pushing forward craft chocolate. That's, what is it? It has to do with credibility, Martin, right? If you are not going to take care of the minor details when they are pointed out to you, things that might take 30 seconds or a minute to fix, how can we trust that you're actually taking care of the big things? That's the point. It's about credibility, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? The reason why you, Maricel and Monica, should care about taking care of the minor details, because it says a lot about the way you, A, treat your students, B, treat the entrants to your competitions, and think about your responsibilities to the industry at large. You don't care about taking care of the details, which are going to be a part of your credibility. So, right? So, and my final response is, when you use proudly craft as an excuse for not attending to fixing my details, minor details, that's where I see a problem. And I suspect it's why you can't see where I am coming from. So let's jump over a little bit to the browser. So here we are at the home page of the IICCT, and join our global community of fine chocolate tasters. And what we do is we scroll to the bottom of the page and we say, it still says, this is after 2 weeks almost, right? It still says 2025 International Institute for Chocolate and Cacao Tasting. This is a directive in WordPress. It should take like 11 seconds to fix this, right? But they haven't fixed it. They have chosen not to fix it yet. I did point out that when I started out, this is the homepage of 70%.com, that there was no copyright notice at the bottom of the page, there's now a copyright notice at the bottom of the page. If I go to the Chocolate Awards website, there is no copyright notice. There's also no privacy policy notice. Now, that may not be strictly necessary here because there doesn't appear that they're actually collecting any data here, but there's normally got to, if there are any logs, there's probably got to be some sort of cookie/GDPR notice, right? Unless they're setting no cookies, right? So it's missing, right? And if we go to the other International Chocolate Awards website, enter.chocolateawards.com, what we do is we find that there's no GDPR notice, there's no privacy notice, there's nothing here which says this is how we use your data, right? They are collecting email addresses and passwords. So at the very least, there needs to be some sort of terms of service and or privacy policy, which says this is what we do with your data. And if you just, this is what we do with it, right? And just saying, oh, our policies are in line with the GDPR isn't legally sufficient, right? It wouldn't take long to put together a policy page that says this is what we're doing. What's also really important to notice is that even if there is a policy page, it says downloads of our policy documents. So you can go to this page and you can take a look at their policy documents, right? This is on the Chocolate Tasting Institute website. It's not on the Chocolate Awards website. It's not on the 70% website, right? So technically, these policy documents don't actually refer to what's going on in these other websites, my understanding of the law. And notice there's no privacy policy. There's no GDPR compliance policy, right? So they've had, I pointed this out, they've had about 2 weeks. They haven't fixed the problem, right? They're still got a 2025 International Institute, still 2025 copyright notice, not 2026 copyright notice. And there's no privacy policy on any of these things, right? So just, it's the little details. Where can we find other things that are about this? So here's one of my concerns that I was originally, when I went through, that caught my eye. This is on their chocolate and cacao flavor profile map page. You can go understand a little bit about, here's the map. It's slightly interactive. It doesn't say how scoring happens when you use this map, right? And it's interesting. But it says we've collected tens of thousands of evaluations that have helped us refine and improved our system and map. And my question is, who owns that data? Now, if you are a judge and you entered the data as a part of judging, then I think there's a reasonable expectation that the IICCT owns that because they're running the awards program. But if you're going to 70%.com and you're entering personal profiles on 70%.com, then I haven't added one yet. I've just been looking at the user interface, right, as somebody who is not a student and how that works. There's no clear understanding of who owns that, right? And it may, and it's a very, very slow website. So you got that. And you go through a process. You have to search for a company in the database, and then you have to go search for a bar, right? And then you have to go, you have to say, is the sample in good condition? You say, yes, I'm not sure. You have to give it a high level evaluation. You have to tell it what you think about it. And now you can go and start taking a look at it. The question is if you're not a judge, right? If you're a student, or if you're somebody who is just curious about how to use the system, who owns the data that you enter, right? Right now, it is not clear, and it should be clear. And that is the point here. Please, Martin, Maricel, publish, right? Some sort of public policy. It requires a link. It could be to a PDF file, right? That says this is what we do with your data. I mean, here's the Chocolate Life. Let's go to the Chocolate Life. So scroll to the top of the page about the Chocolate Life. Oh, I have a privacy policy. And here in the United States, we need a Digital Millennium Copyright Act. a DMCA notice. And so not only is it in the top navigation, but it's privacy policy and DMCA notice. It's in the bottom of the well. So because number one, it doesn't take very long to do that. And number 2, it's a legal requirement that I do it. So please, guys, go take a look at it. Go look at the course dates. So one of the things that I said earlier is that one of the things that you need to know, right? And I'll get to some of the more of the detail in a second, is that you need to understand the difference between level 1, level 1 plus, level 2, and level 3, and which ones are actually accredited by a third-party agency, right? So in the email that I pointed to you from Martin, he says very, very explicitly that level 1 in English is a vocational qualification, right, accredited by an independent third party, right? So it turns out that level 1 plus, level 2, level 3, none of the other courses that are offered by IICCT are in fact independently accredited certificates. You need to be aware of that, right? It just is that only the level 1 chocolate tasting in English is accredited by an independent organization. So if we look at what's upcoming, the level 1 plus certification. So if you look at it's happening at Fjok in Norway. It's like, I would love to go to Norway. My daughter's in Iceland on her way to Sweden at the moment. So we look at the details and booking, and what we do is we find out how much it's cost and how 2 days and what we're going to do. We get lunches, right? Special price if I book level 1 and level 2. And it says the course will be taught by Monica Moschini, right? For information and registration, contact Monica directly, right? So Monica is going to be the instructor on this. That's a good thing. You know who one of the instructor is, but you need to ask the question, who are you paying? Are you paying the IICCT, or are you going to be paying Monica directly? Why is that important? Because it shifts liability away from IICT as a company to an individual person. It may. You just need to be aware. Who are you paying? This came up in one of the interviews I did with somebody who took a level 3 course, right? They ended up not paying the IICCT. They ended up paying the instructor directly. And the question is, what's going on here, right? So it's important to ask these questions, right? In my opinion. Right, so I come down here, combined level 1 plus certificate, level 1 and level 2 certificate. So if we come through here and say, hey, here's the level 1 certificate in chocolate tasting, what will happen is I'll go, this is interesting. It'll take place in Sao Paulo. It will be taught in English, and 50 of the 255 euros, right, 50 pounds of it will go to FDQ, who will issue an official off-qual approved certificate. And if you want to go look at the FDQ Level 1 Foundation Award, this link is broken. This is another case of let's pay attention to detail, because if I am interested in going and learning about this, I'm going to go look at this and I'm going to say, what's going on here, guys? It's just a link. Can you go, please make sure that the links in your descriptions are working. So let's, there are many, many more things that I can do here, which talk about that. And before I bring Erin Andrews on, Erin is in the green room. She's in the back waiting for me. I can see her smiling. I'll bring her on in just a second, but I want to point out another place, Martin, Monica, Maricel, right? Hey, Martin, your picture is broken. I don't know how long your picture is broken, but your picture is broken. It should work. I mean, this is just a simple fix the darn image. And I know it's a link that's broken because we have the picture to Maricel here. The other thing is there is a link in Monica's or in Martin's bio to something called Direct Cacao. And Direct Cacao doesn't work, right? So you're talking about Direct Cacao, it's part of your bio. It's another broken link. Here's the point. They're minor details. I understand you are proudly craft and not corporate, right? But paying attention to the details talks about the level of professionalism, not corporatism, level of professionalism that you bring to the entire enterprise. Monica's image is not there. I mean, it's just, please, guys, right? Martin, guys, well, the three of you, right? Please understand, right, that one of the ways that you can help grow craft chocolate, specialty chocolate, all that kind of stuff, is show to the world that you're a professional organization. And before I go into anything else, I want to bring in Erin onto stage. Hey, Erin, how are you today? How are things in Seattle?
Things are great in Seattle. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine and
perfect.
Dandy. So,
excellent.
Listen, thanks for agreeing to appear live. I was able to get, you know what, let me unhide my face because I can. Yeah, let's unhide my face. So thanks for agreeing to appear on camera. So you've been in the room for just a couple of minutes. How does so number one, how many of these classes have you taken? Have you taken level 1, taken level 2, taken level 3?
Yes, I have taken both level 1 and level 2.
Gotcha. And what were your perceptions of the classes? So let's think about it first. How did your expectations for the classes going in match your experience of taking the classes? Right. So what was, how did that all work for you? We don't need to take a look at this. Let's go here.
Absolutely. Well, I think that kind of backtracking, I think that one of the things that I find common in every single chocolate maker that I know is unceasing, unquenchable source and for knowledge and curiosity. And I think that that's one of the great things. I like to say, although we met in 2018 when I was, was it 2008 when I was starting my first chocolate company in Belize, is that intense and intentional since 2008, yet I'm still learning. And I think that that's one of the things that's so key to really this industry and the people that I consider to be my peers. And so one of the things about that, and with any profession, I earned my CPA many years ago. And what do you need to do as a CPA? You need to have continuing education. And I think that that's incredibly important, and something that's actually undervalued and underappreciated is that if you're not continually learning, you're stagnating. And for one of the things that I love about our industry is there's always more to learn. And so going into this, I always have curiosity. I always have questions. And just like spending time with you on the road in Peru and spending time with Martin and Marcel on the road in Peru, the bumpy, hours in a bus sort of thing. There's always something to learn.
Was that the ill-fated overnight bus from Lima to
if you've been sourcing long enough, there's always some crazy story about, getting stuck and all kinds of stuff. So, So, I mean, I think that one of the big things that I love about cacao is that insatiable curiosity and that wanting to learn. And I think that one of the things that we often get stuck in is, as a teacher, are you still learning? And what was really neat to me is John Nancy, who's really such an instrumental part of being the foundation of the Bean to Bar Artisan Chocolate Renaissance, does a roasting.
So just a second. Arguably, the single most important person in terms of opening up from a production pathway perspective.
Absolutely.
And what's important to note is that Martin with 70%.com, chocophile.com, right? And then John Nancy present the foundation of the early online community, which helped to drive this whole thing together. And so I'm sorry. I just wanted to
you're absolutely
work on that for
absolutely.
Other people. Yeah.
And I think that context is important. But one of the things that I thought was really fascinating. So John teaches the how to roast cacao seminar at Indie Chocolate just about every year, right before the Northwest Chocolate Festival. And last year, Maricel decided, hey, I'm going to take that class. And the discussion about, as a teacher, how do you continue to learn and learn from others? And so I think that that's a really key component that we need to keep refreshing and, as they say, sharpening our tools. And so that's one of the things that I bring coming into any educational course, any book that I read about chocolate, any online articles that I'm reading about, I'm always there with the almost unquenchable thirst for knowledge and learning more. And so I always come into that with that. But one of the things that I find refreshing is that my peers are also looking for that growth of their own abilities. And I think that that's a very important thing. And that's why I'm creating Geek Week as far as a hand-selected group of people that will rotate every year as a personal retreat that I'm going to be doing with kind of some hand-selected people of areas that I want to learn more about. And I think that that's the thing that is key, is that it's not that the curriculum is one and done, which I think would be a tragedy, because we're learning so much about cacao through the years. And so I think that one of the things that's really important is that thirst for knowledge and that continual improvement, that refining of information. So for me going in, absolutely, I'm a curious person. I love to learn from people. As you know, I've learned from you as well.
We all learn from each other. The
Absolutely.
notion that I can come up with something that is brand new that nobody has ever thought of before is
hubris. Yeah. And I think
that's the word. That is the word that I was looking for. However, there is a bit of hubris in the title of John Nancy's. It's a way to roast chocolate. Right, it's not the way to roast chocolate.
Well, he does talk about methodologies.
I would equivocate about that. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, he does talk about different methodologies. He does. Okay. I mean, I think that you always have to give context within learning. I think that's very important. And so I think that giving that context is one of the things that John is really good at. He has looked at a lot. He's researched this through the years. And so I think that is something that comes into that. Ironic fact is that the roasters before Theo Chocolate got sold, much bigger chocolate company than Indie Chocolate, the roasters of Theo Chocolate did John Nancy's roasting seminar too at Indie Chocolate. They're a much bigger company. And so I think that that's really a refreshing thing, is to have that collaborative model where we're all learning from one another. And we get to really learn from people that have studied this in a very deep and meaningful way. And so I like to see that. That's why I like to offer that as well. Yeah.
So you've offered the first half of the question. So here's your expectations.
Yep.
When you came out the other side of level 1, now did you take them separately or together?
Together.
Okay, so back to back, in other words.
Yeah.
Right. So when you came out the other side, so number one is, did you have an expectation that one of the partners, Martin, Monica, or Marisol, would be giving the class, right? Or all of the sessions in all of the classes?
Yes, because
was that in fact your experience? Was that in fact your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, because I had talked to both Martin and Marisol when we were on the bus in Peru one year and said, if you guys ever want to teach the class, I have space for you. So I knew it would be one of them. Okay.
So it was an in-person example. So what I can tell you is that with my interviews with other people, right, is that especially in level 1, you might not see any of the partners, right? That all of the classes might be given by some person whose background and qualifications might include an IICCT certificate, but are otherwise unknown to you. So, and if you go to level 2, some or one or two of the sessions over the course of the several days might include one of the partners, but not all of the sessions will be taught by one of the partners. So Aaron, your experience of doing the classes in person at your own facility as a result of an invitation does in fact mirror one of the respondents that I spoke with, because they had this personal relationship with the instructors and assisted in the presentation of classes. Their experience with the classes was very different from people who did not have that relationship with any of the partners and took the classes remotely, which is why I asked that aspect of the question. But when it comes to the actual content
I was going to say,
delivered,
well, I would have to say I am very old school, and I would have to say COVID zoomed me out. I believe that there's so much more to gain in person, that as much as I do online things, there's nothing like being there in person. The conversations
Well,
are
especially if there's organoleptic evaluation, which is involved.
Absolutely.
Everybody is tasting the same thing in the same environment at the same time, right? In the same way, which is very different from, oh, I know that I'm going to have a call tomorrow. And so what I need to do is I need to do this. And I might be doing it at midnight and spend 20 minutes, whereas somebody is. So I understand those kinds of conditions, right?
Yep.
But it may be hard for you to put yourself, which is one of the things that I try to do, right, in the face of somebody who was completely naive. Going in, I don't have any understanding, right? And so, again, the question is, you had a unique circumstance where both Martin and Maricel were giving level 1 and level 2, right?
Yes, I would say yes in that respect, but also we had a pretty interesting cross section. And so it wasn't all industry beasts with decades of experience. So I think that was actually something that was good.
And I've got to say, that's another point that was brought up, right? That somebody mentioned that they had taken some of the classes remotely, but had taken level 3 in person, and that there was a fundamental difference taking it in person with respect to being a part of a group, doing the professional networking. There's an opportunity for, sitting around the water jug,
Absolutely.
right, and talking about what you're doing, right? And this is the reason why I wanted to have the conversation, Erin, and I'm glad you stood up for it, agreed to be a part of here, is that it's important to set expectations going in. Like, what do you want to get out of the class? Understand what the differences are between taking something remotely, less expensive, much more flexible in terms of your schedule, but what are you giving up, right, when you go and take something in person, right? Because it turns out that the professional networking, right, and the other things that happen, the group work that might be involved, hearing other people give an evaluation of something you're tasting and go, I never thought about that before, it wouldn't occur to me, all that kind of stuff. So this is not a knock against the way the programs are done. They're offered remotely, they're offered in person, right? And setting up your expectations. So for example, if you are just a member of the general public, you have no plans to be professional or anything like that, taking the classes is all about expanding your vocabulary and opening your mind and things like that. And doing that remotely can be perfectly, and you're doing it in person, maybe you get to meet one of your heroes or somebody like that, right? But if what it is you are a chocolate maker, and you're going to go in there and think, I'm going to learn something that's going to improve my chocolate making skills, how to make chocolate is not really a part of the curriculum. And so you're going to be disappointed, right, in that. So
I disagree in that.
So Erin, that is a direct quote. That is a direct quote from somebody I interviewed. The chocolate maker who went in thinking it would improve his chocolate making skills, and he found that there was nothing in the classes that he took, right, that actually improved his chocolate making skills. His tasting skills, yes, right, but not his making skills. I just wanted to make that.
No, but that is interrelated, is what I'm saying, is that there is talk about, things that, how long you're refining it for. Are you conching it? Your roasts, right? Your roasts impact flavor. And so there are things there for you as a chocolate maker in part of that. And that maybe they already knew that going into it. And so it wasn't therefore something that they kind of saw as the curriculum of learning. But I think that there are parts of the curriculum that do talk about those aspects that you may or may not be aware of as a chocolate maker going in.
Right.
That's the clarification I would make.
What I will say is I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. However, there's a difference between taking them remotely and taking them in person.
Absolutely.
And there's a difference. If the person who is giving the class, right, has only received information about chocolate making secondhand because they've taken the class and actually hasn't spent hundreds of hours making chocolate, their ability to give advice is going to be different. And again, it's really all about setting expectations, which means that you, as a student, right, should go in and say, if it's not clear who's giving the class, ask who's giving the class and what their background is. So what you can say, well, maybe there's another class that might have somebody who might be a better teacher for me. That's the only point that I want. That's the main point that I want to make.
Well,
there.
I think that there's also the ability to ask as you're signing up, is saying, hey, these are some of the areas that I would like to see addressed. Will this be addressed in this class? Right? Because then you're setting your own course as far as meeting your own expectations. And so I think that clear communications on both sides, even of the person signing up for that, will have a better experience if they can articulate their objectives ahead of time.
And we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. In this particular case. Absolutely. So understanding what you want to get out of the class, right? And then clearly articulating that, right, is going to mean that you are going to get a much better experience out of what it is that you're doing. Because
I think that's true in life.
You have are,
yes. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly very true, and it's certainly, goes back to, the 3 years of frustration I felt as a student at the Rhode Island School of Design, right? Because what I wanted to achieve out of it was not what the school was teaching, right? And everything I learned was despite the curriculum, not because of the curriculum. And it turns out, I think it made me stronger. It certainly made me more skeptically critical, right? In a kind of way. But so your experience, because you took level 1 and level 2, right, with Martin and Maricel, is going to probably be qualitatively different than a lot of other people's experiences. Just off the bat.
mean, my experience going into that before starting that course, I mean, I've already started my second Bean to Bar chocolate company. I have a lot more experience than most people in the industry. So yes, absolutely. I came in with a lot of knowledge. But I think that, again, it's one of the things that I try to do is to come in with open eyes and open ears to see what can I learn here, because that's really what that's what I'm there for, is to learn. And one of the things I love about learning is that you never know those sidebar pieces of information, especially in person, that you are privy to in person. Yeah.
Right. So answering the question, so understanding, I don't know that I don't know that. And then being shown, I don't know that. And then learning, filling in that gap of what you didn't know is really, really important. And, in parallel, Erin, so I spent my freshman year at a place called the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington.
I know it well. Right? Yes.
You do. And I was there when Matt Groening was there and Linda Berry were there. Right. And I was actually a classmate of Linda's while she was, do you know the cartoonist, Linda Berry?
Does not ring a bell to me. No.
Anyway, so Matt Groening was one of the founders of The Simpsons. So one of the creators of The Simpsons. Okay. So he was a student there. I didn't have a close relationship with him, but then I spent 3 years working in non-commercial FM radio in Portland, Oregon, before moving to Providence to go to RISD. So I was at that point, 22, 23 years old, as opposed to someone who was 18, who had a lot of experience and went in there with a better understanding of what it is that I wanted. And then with the knowledge that what I could do is I could extract from it, look for the experiences that would give me what I needed if I wasn't getting it from the instructors or asking the instructors for them. The whole point of this is understanding. If you are a member of the general public and what you just want to do is an introduction to chocolate tasting and with a formalized method, which is what the IICCT has developed, right? You'll get an introduction to history as well. One of the people I interviewed said for his level 1 section, there was just way too much history, right? This could have been, here's a book, read the book. And you can do that. And his exams were more about history than what was covered in the class. His experience, right? So that's why I'm glad that you're on today, because your experiences were different. Yeah. So in terms of that, one of the expectations you have is what I'm going to do with certificate. So you have a level 1 certificate. What does that mean for you personally and for Indie Chocolate as a business?
So I will take any book that has the word cacao or chocolate in the index, because I'm about learning. I will take any class if it's certified or not, because it's about learning. It's about building my own competencies. It's about finding my own areas of where I can learn more, where it might just brush the surface on things. So I think that those competencies are a building block for me personally. If it's certified or not certified, am I going to hang my hat on one versus the other? Absolutely not. I think it's great that they're certified because for a lot of people, that is a differentiator. For me, their experience that they bring and the fact that they have diverse experience, one, Maricel being Latina, also bringing in the Americas beyond the United States, bringing that forth. Martin, both the UK, Monica, the continental Europe. I think that those are good differentiators because the UK market in chocolate, you know this, is different than continental Europe. It's very fascinating. I've taught chocolate in London. And so I think that it's important to kind of understand both the consumption side as well as the producing side. And so I think that those are things that are helpful experiences that they bring to their curriculum and to their teaching, right? Like you and I will know some foreign fruits and what those taste like because we've tasted them at origin. We can't go into Safeway and buy those. And so I think that that type of experience is very helpful.
If I could go down the street and get jabuticaba, I mean, I would be in heaven. I really, even though the carbon footprint of shipping jabuticaba from either Ecuador or Brazil is like insane. But
yeah, if you can get it in, yes. But yeah, so right. I think that
but you're answering a slightly different question, if I may. Right?
Yeah.
So first one of which is that only level 1 is a certified class, which is independently accredited, right? And what that independent accreditation means is that there's a set of policies that FDQ have in order to be consistent with UK education laws, right? And every year they get taken a look at, right?
Yep.
Right. And it has to do with the curriculum and the way the curriculum is developed. So they're accrediting what is presented to them as this is what we want it is to be accredited. Right?
And absolutely. And if you're a professor at a university, that accreditation and being able to be compensated for what you're doing is very helpful. I'm not a professor at a university. I teach at a few, classes.
In the UK,
yes.
In the UK, it's unclear. I don't think that anything that's being done, right, with respect to FDQ certification or accreditation would count as continuing education credits here in the United States. So again, if that is your goal, you need to figure it out in advance and say, this is one of the reasons why I'm taking it. What's also important, if anything else is certified, level 2 is self-certified. IICCT is self-certifying. And you don't know what the standards are for their self-certifying. There's another aspect which is really, really important about this, which is that level 1, which is accredited by FDQ, means that if you have a grievance, like they say I didn't pass the test, right? But I think I did. There is a formal grievance process that you can go to the FDQ and say, I think I passed the test, and they say I didn't, right? When you go to any other course and you take the exams and they say you didn't pass, there's no formal grievance process, right? The recourse is to speak to the instructor, right? Or to try to talk to IICCT more generally. And one of the experiences that was conveyed to me, someone says, I was taking level 3, I was told I didn't pass. And what happened is that there was no formal grievance process. And so one of the instructors said, go talk to the other instructor, right? So it's, to be clear, that's one of the things you need to be aware of if certification is important to you, is there a formal process for protesting if they say you failed your class? Right?
Well, the other aspect of it is you can also retake the class, I do believe, if you haven't passed it. I mean, retake the exam. If you haven't passed it, I do believe that there is I mean, it's not you either pass or you fail and you can't ever do anything with it again. So
well,
I think
here's an anecdote.
Yeah.
Here's an anecdote. Here's an anecdote. An anecdote. So one of the people that I interviewed said, we took the class, but we let them know that we canceled our vacation in order to be around during that session. And then the organizers canceled the test part of it and said, we're going to do it like in the future when these people were on vacation. Right. So, and they're not going to reschedule their vacation twice. Right. And they said, well, you can take the test again in 2 months. Right. At which point, yes, they were given the opportunity to take the test, but the time that had passed, right, they no longer had the samples for evaluation and all the kind of things that they were going to be tested on. So perhaps, right, but there's no guarantee that you can take the test the next day or take the test the next week. Right? Again, it's the lack of a formal set out grievance process and what happens in this case or that case. So it's
was that a one-off or I mean that's I don't know the circumstances for that, so I really couldn't.
So again, right? It's again, this is it may be a one-off. I haven't heard of anybody else saying I wasn't able to take it because they canceled the test and then they rescheduled the test at a time where we couldn't take it. Right. So that is a rare occurrence, but it's important to understand, right, what the process is, what self-certification might imply. That's the only point. With the FDQ certification, there is a formal grievance process, right? And with the other levels, and the other classes that are given, there's no formal grievance process. Just, it's an observation.
Sample size of one. Yeah.
As you're going in, right, that you need to be aware of. And, you're an adult, right? And you get to decide what risks and what the rewards are. But again, it's part of the ROI calculation. If you go in, right, one of the things that I heard is that there's no real expectation that getting any certificate level is going to lead to professional advancement, right? I'm not going to, am I going to be able to make a career if I'm level 2 certified via the IICCT? Whereas if I get a Master of Wine through Wine Spirits Education Trust, right, I can go make a living as a critic or a sommelier or something like that. Right?
Well, I would also say the wine market, as we both know, is much more established. That is something where there's not the price sensitivity of chocolate. And so I would say comparing wine to chocolate in many respects is not a valid comparison because of price sensitivity alone. And so I would say that I would use something more like coffee as opposed to chocolate. And I don't think you're going to make so much of a living in coffee either. Wine has a much higher end, non-price sensitive consumer than chocolate or coffee.
So again, this is all about expectations, right?
Yeah.
So if you go into taking these classes with the expectation that being a level 2 certified through the IICCT is going to lead to a comfortable living, I would suggest that you reassess that. It could. I mean, there are people I know here in the United States who have taken what it is that they have learned and built it into a business, right? It's not related to the IICCT, but they've built it into a business which turns out to be relatively comfortable for them, right? And gives them the satisfaction and everything that it is to do. It is possible, right? But it requires, as you know, Aaron, a lot of background, a lot of understanding, gumption and all these other things. There's no magical, 100%. I'm level 2 certified, something's going to happen to me now. And by the way, I mean, this is just, a personal thing is anybody can say that they're level 1 or level 2 certified. There's actually no directory that you can go to and say, yeah, this person is actually level 1 or level 2 certified or level 3 certified. It would be, I mean, again, Monica, Martin, Maricel, you are free to run your business however you want to run your business, right? But I have no way of knowing if somebody
Well, I mean,
claims
you
that
could
they're-
ask them to show them your certificate. I mean, you do get a certificate of, at the end of it. So, I mean, if you really want to nitpick on following through, there is a way that they can validate that. Yeah.
Right. But when I get, dozens of them in my social media feeds every day, it becomes impractical to go at that level of detail. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But it's a case of, right, the people who run these programs, they know who enters them, what the awards are, what the scores were. They have tens of thousands of these things, but the only part of it that trickles up to the surface is the score in an award, right? And we don't actually know what they're doing with the information other than improving the neural network, which drives the system, which is one thing that they're doing. But, it's three people, Monica, Martin, and Maricel, right, own the International Institute of Chocolate Tasting, Chocolate and Cacao Tasting, and the International Chocolate Awards, and 70%.com, which is the connector between the two of them, right? And that's a lot of influence in the hands of three people, right? And all props to them. They've saw an opportunity in the market. They went and did things. They devoted years and years and years of doing it, right? But the point that I wanted to make, which I talked about, and maybe it was before you were on, Aaron, is that just because they have this institutional history does not mean that we can't criticize what they're doing, right?
Well, there's
So, for
Yelp.
example,
You can always criticize anything out there.
Right,
Yeah.
well, but
Yeah.
but as I started out at the very beginning, when I was talking with them, when I was had this correspondent with Martin, he said, number one, if you're going to be neutral or fair, I'm happy to talk to you. But if you're not going to be neutral or fair, I don't want to talk to you. Number one.
Well,
and then number two is
you have to step back because there has been animosity in the way things have transpired before, where they, right? I mean, it's much easier to criticize than create. And we don't want to be like the bucket of crabs. I don't know if you know the analogy of the bucket of crabs. I just read an article about Belize in this respect, is that if you're a crab pulling others down, nobody gets up and out and makes those contributions you want to see. If we are supporting and giving a hand out of the bucket, I think as an industry is the very best we can do. As somebody that is, has a company and has public criticism and things like that, is that one of the things I take in my personal way that I correspond with other businesses, I like to say, you publicly praise and privately coach. And that if the privately coaching becomes a problem, then you have other recourses. But if you don't tell somebody that your drink is to the temperature that you want it, if you want it extra hot, tell us you want it extra hot. I think that there is communication on both sides that helps meet those expectations. Because really what you're talking about is meeting expectations. And so I think that communication, I think that there is an openness, but also there is you put in something so much. Do you feel safe with the other person as far as that communication being in a collaborative, pulling somebody out of the bucket instead of pulling them back in where neither of you get out? And I think as an industry, we have been like herding cats. And I think that this has been to our disservice. I think that if you look at the specialty coffee marketplace tasting wheel and the curriculum that they have through it, that is very straightforward. That has taken a lot of collaboration. I cup coffee with some regularity, and I know the protocols. I know the tasting, and it's very, very helpful. And I think that not having that consistency has not been to the advantage of our industry, especially within the artisan and craft space of that. We have a very weird community where most of the chocolate sold in the world is by very few makers. But the industry that I think you and I are both most passionate about is that very small sliver. And I think that one of the things that I love about what you do is you educate people about what the difference is between those two parts of the industry. And that is what I really want to see, that we find ways to make collaboration a better model within the industry, because I think we have a lot more to gain than to lose.
So Erin, number one of the things that I've been talking about for quite some time is one of the things that we as an industry face, specialty chocolate, which I think is better than craft or artisan for a bunch of reasons, right? Because when we think about specialty coffee, we know what that means. So I think specialty chocolate is a good way is a term that is not stealable, right, by big chocolate, like they've stolen bean to bar, for example, right? Is that we're all speaking like past each other.
Absolutely.
Right? We think we're saying the same things, but we mean entirely different things. There's no shared vocabulary. There's no shared messaging, marketing messaging around those things. And one of the things that happened that came out of, the beer judging protocol and the Specialty Coffee Association over the work of decades, right, is that emerged, right? And now the industry can speak through one voice. The Wine and Spirits Education Trust, all of those things are about getting there. We're 20 years into this thing that we call specialty chocolate, barely, maybe 1984, if you push it back as far as we can, for the modern introduction of single origin chocolate, right, in France in 1984. Right? So this is very, very young, right? And so it's going to be messy, right, until we can come together. And this is actually a point that Sophie Jewett at York Cocoa House in the UK talks about. I've been talking with Sophie for many years and we have major disagreements, right? It's clear I'm just wanting to pull the really hard work of others apart. And no, Sophie, I am going to disagree with that. I'm not trying to pull the really hard work apart, right? What I'm saying is there are little things that could be done which could improve, right, the trust and confidence we have in what it is that they're doing, right? And I would like to see them do it, because when other people look at this, they're going, right, it becomes something you can look at and focus only on those things. I really want to be talking about how the tasting protocol works, right, and what's going on underneath it and how it's constructed, right, and understand how flavor vocabularies are developed and how out of flavor vocabularies we can talk about education and competition judging and how we build things, right? So I really do want to talk about that, because I think that gets to a better place for the industry as a whole, right? People like you and Aaron Martin have all done amazing work bringing the content into the public domain, right? But I struggle to see your connection. And if you struggle to see the connection, that's my bad, right? I haven't done a good job of actually explaining what it is that I want to do here, and how I got to these places. But what I do want to just absolutely let people know is that I have known Martin and Monica and Maricel for a long time, right? I have been a judge. I was in that bus in Peru, right? And I've been with Maricel twice, at least in Peru. I judged 2 times, if not 3 times, during the Peruvian round of the International Chocolate Awards. These are people that I have an enormous amount of respect for and a history with, and learning from them is an amazing opportunity, an amazing benefit for me. So that is not what it is that I am trying to do here at all. I've said it several times, that what my goals are to here. And Sophie, if I failed to make that connection, then I am sorry that I haven't made that connection. But what I do want to say is that Martin and Maricel and I have been having conversations like this for nearly a decade, in which privately I've been trying to negotiate with them about these kinds of issues, right? And there's no impasse. And maybe it's just because I'm in America and I'm loud and I'm brash, right? And Martin, that's not the way he likes to be talked to. Maybe it's just a personality thing. And Aaron, you don't have to. You don't have to.
You don't want me to chime in on that one?
You can certainly do this. Listen, but I have deliberately chosen to be an independent journalist in this area, right? And
but
that's
at the
my
same
choice.
time, Clay, you say that, but you do have some things that might conflict with that as far as being completely objective in that, just based on your experience and your alliances that you've had. I think that let's be honest, there are things where you could consider yourself to be a competitor to this program. And I would say that's valid. I mean, you've got a great book you've put out and published about tasting, right? And so I would say, be completely transparent if you're going to be transparent, is that you're not necessarily completely objective, that you have a competition on certain levels. And that is the truth that I see, knowing all of the involved participants. And so I think that it is important to acknowledge that, just like I'd like Clarence Thomas to acknowledge when he has things
hopefully what it is that I've done doesn't rise to the egregious level of Clarence Thomas. So,
I
get the analogy. I don't like the association. So,
but I mean, recusing and
Aaron,
kind of being transparent with that.
Yeah, you're absolutely true. If people are familiar with my work, they know I authored a book called Discover Chocolate back in 2007 now, right? And my approach has completely changed since 2007. What I knew in 2007 and what the industry knew in 2007 is very different from what I know now and what the industry know now, in part because of my contact with you and my contact with Martin and Maricel and Monica and tens of thousands of other people who have done this. I have been a judge at the International Chocolate Awards. I have been a judge for the Premio Bean de Bar Brasil. I have been a judge for the Craft Chocolate Challenge. All of these things are things that I'm open about. People know that I have done them, right? And all of the work that I'm doing, helping support festivals here and there and doing all these things, right, are in the goal of how do we improve appreciation and connoisseurship and a broader awareness about
100%.
what it is that we're doing. And that, in the end, we all want to get to the same place.
Absolutely.
Right? And we have these people who've done that. Now, I don't think that I've hidden any of those associations that I've got. I just don't necessarily bring them up in every conversation.
Well,
which
I
may be my bad. Which may be my bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I'm
so it's important. So, people,
yeah.
Right. So, people have said to me, "Hey, Clay, you've been a guest of Barry Callebaut, for the launch of Ruby in Shanghai. Therefore, you are in the pocket of Big Chocolate." Right. And, that is, they didn't pay, they paid my travel expenses. They didn't pay me for my opinion. Right. But it is a persistent accusation that gets leveled against me. But what I would say is that there are very few people in this business, right, who can on one day speak to the global CEO of Barry Callebaut and ask him a question. Hey, when are you going to meet your voluntary commitments under Hark and Engel, right, to his face, right?
Let me know when that is.
Which is never. And but by the way, for anybody who's watching this, do you know what September 19th, 2026 is? It's the 25th anniversary of the signing of Hark and Engel, right? And we're going to be talking about that. But I just, Aaron, I spent a lot of time in critiques in art school, whether it was at Evergreen or whether it was at RISD. And one of the things that I learned is that all criticism, well, most criticism, comes from a place of personal understanding, right? And so, Sophie, thank you very much for making the observation that you did. I don't want to seem too defensive. I will cop to the fact that I might have done a very poor job in putting this together today and making if that's what it is if that's what you're responding to, right? And I will take that observation and sit with it a while and see how I can do better. But what I will say is that if Martin, if Monica, if Maricel wants to come on and have a conversation with me, right? As Aaron, you and I have had a conversation, and we haven't agreed about much of anything really, except we have a common goal, right?
We do have a common goal, and I'm very thankful for that common goal. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Listen, and ultimately, my motto is, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you are doing it wrong.
That is I say coffee, chocolate, and tea, because we do all three. But yes, I agree with you.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I have a family member who is a world expert on chocolate and on cheese, and is a cheese judge. And I'm going, oh my gosh, how cool is that? But that's where we all want to go. And I'm hoping that people who are watching this, right, will understand that we need more of these conversations, right? We need more of these conversations that are in public with the people who have influence, right? Who are doing these things, right? And so one of my goals here, right, not stated, is can we have these conversations in public, right? With the people who matter, with the goal of improving.
And I think that's a very important distinction, because it's much easier to criticize than it is to create. And when we go from a standpoint, I do a lot of collaboration. My tea line is a collaboration with a master tea blender with our cacao. And so that collaboration model, I think, is much more important and much more instrumental in building. I use the crab analogy because I read that last night. If you have a bucket of crabs, you don't need to put a lid on it, because the crabs keep pulling each other down in the bucket. What I would like to see as an industry is that we have one crab pull out of that bucket and give a hand down to the others and pull them out of the bucket, so we can all improve and make changes in a meaningful, positive direction that helps us all. That's my hope as an industry, is that we have that positive collaboration and working together in a way that sometimes we have to eat our own ego, but we do that because we know of the greater good. Yeah.
So there are a couple of things, as I pointed out at the very beginning, which is that the systems for judging beer and wine and cheese, balsamic vinegar,
coffee, yes,
and coffee, right?
Yeah.
Right. Grew out of, in some cases, right, these systems existed prior to the Industrial Revolution. And there's this extremely long history that we can take a look at, right? Whereas chocolate is very new. What I want to see is more people, right, getting to the point where they're talking to each other and bringing them up. I just think it's too early to say this is the way to do it.
I think that it's more of a negative to stall, because I think we're already behind and it's hurting us as an industry. Having the move towards a standardization model has been extremely beneficial for specialty coffee. That's something that I think that we could really learn from. The other thing that I love about the coffee analogy is that you can also cup, and I've done this, I've done a cupping of coffee from green and every 30 seconds of a roast of the same batch, right? And so we know in chocolate that how you roast the same batch is can have very differential results as far as the final flavor. And so I think that there is a lot that we can learn from that. I think that standardization has been, I've seen that. I go to the specialty coffee shows. I work with a specialty coffee roaster. And so I see that as being a good way that has really helped them improve, is having a model. And so how can we make what we're doing work? And I think one of the things that I really appreciated about that is I'm a smeller. I can tell you where a restaurant is in a town I've never been to. And one of the things that I think is really important, I started Indie Chocolate with lotion. This is my second bean to bar chocolate company, and people wanted my lotion. So cocoa butter based. But what is fascinating to me is smell. And this is one of the things that I think that this coursework does very well, is that I will ask somebody, do you want orange lotion or mint lotion? And they'll tell me, and that brings back a memory. They'll say, oh, this reminds me of Frango Mints if they're from Chicago. This reminds me of After 8 if they're from the UK. And that one of the things that I think that this does very well in this curriculum in particular, better than I've seen in other curriculums, is the locking of smell and flavor together and coupling them. And I think that that's a very powerful piece that we often overlook. I know that in your book and your teaching, one of the things I've always loved is that you do talk about we call it pheno aroma for a reason, is that that smell component is very important to flavor. And I think that that's one of the things.
I don't know if, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a book called Hidden Persuaders in Cocoa and Chocolate, which was published in 2018, which actually I learned when I went to the launch party I had conversations with the lead researcher on the book, and some of my thinking is incorporated in the book Unacknowledged. Was exactly that notion. The connection that they made was, here's an aroma chemical, and in collaboration with Givaudan, the fragrance house, what they said is, here is the emotion or emotions that these chemicals evoke, right? And understanding it. It's really, really, really important to be
as somebody that gets migraines from synthetic neurotoxins, which is in a lot of what we smell. What was really, really important to me is that what I'm smelling is actually, like, if we're going to smell olives, I need to smell olives. Olives is the only allergy I have. I can do olive oil, but I can't do olives. So being able to lock in the smell of olives, because I have that very strong connection between smell and flavor, and I can lock that in without tasting that absolute olive that I'm going to react to. And so having that type of real food is actually, I think, one of the really very key things to this methodology. I think it's incredibly helpful.
I don't disagree with you there, right? But in any event, so there's another comment from Sophie. We had a really great discussion about the wider objective. What she was commenting on was the segment where you fixated on certification and one single delivery team, when no other delivery body offers any other certified course, right? And okay, fair criticism. I think in the wider I'm not going to try to be defensive about it right now. I'm going to sit on that and go, okay, perhaps my bad. Perhaps I did appear to be fixated on it, right? I wanted to suggest this wider narrative and say, if you are interested in taking one of these classes, right, understand, right, what your personal objectives are and how you're going to go about making sure that you get from these courses what it is that you want to get to these courses, right? And I did want to share a little bit of the history, right? So I had a correspondence with Martin, right, over the course of roughly 2 weeks, and it did change the way I thought about it. And Sophie, the correspondence with Martin happened after our conversation about this, right? And so I get it, right? And I was responding when I was thinking about putting together the run of show for today. It influenced the way I was going to talk about this going on, right? So in that particular case, Sophie, I'm going to acknowledge, right, what it is that you said, and make sure that I do a better job next time when I'm going to do these things. So thank you very much, right? And Aaron, thank you very much. Do you have anything that you want to say on the way out? I'm happy that you're here today. I haven't been in Seattle for the Northwest Chocolate Festival since 2018, I think was the last time I was there.
You're overdue.
I'm in 2019. Well, yeah. I love going to Seattle. I have a lot of friends in Seattle. The last times I was there, I was representing an equipment company.
Yeah.
Right. And so there are some feelings I have about that relationship, which complicate things. Right. As my answer with almost everything about chocolate is, it depends. Right.
Yes. And I like to say I've now seen every exception to every rule I've ever read about chocolate.
Right.
Yeah.
Except
my
the ones
to El Salvador last year.
Except
everything I've read
you don't know
has
about.
been debunked.
I'm sorry?
I say everything I have read that says cacao is this, I have now said, okay, this is the example of where that's not true. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Old school.
It's
yeah.
Right. So do you have a parting comment that you want to make, Erin?
I do. I would say stay curious, keep learning. Mm-hmm. Cacao is the very best teacher in the world because you will never know anything. Well, I mean, you'll never know everything, excuse me. And I think that that's the joy of chocolate and cacao, is that it is something that continually teaches us. I like to say, if somebody says they know everything about cacao, run, because they're either stupid or dangerous, or possibly both. But I think that's what the joy.
Right.
What's that?
Can say things definitively. Absolutely. One of the ways I characterize this, when people ask me, so I've been doing, I got the chocolate bug in 1994, and I've been doing it professionally since, in one form or another, since sometime in 1998, 1999, depending upon how you characterize things. And what I tell people who say, what, chocolate? What's that all about? And I have yet to find an aspect of human existence that doesn't connect with chocolate or cocoa in some way, right? If one day I want to talk about, genetics and, the genome and the technology of single nucleotide polymorphisms, or I want to talk about the chemistry of cell culturing, right? Or of precision fermentation, or
in vitro fertilization,
or
we've seen in Peru. Yes,
all of those kinds of things. That is the fascination for me, right? Is that, and and that's what it is that engages my brain, is seeing these connections, right? And trying to help other people get excited the same way I am excited by seeing these connections. That's what drives all of this. That's what drives all of this for me. I want to understand better. Not that I am going to have a complete understanding of everything and know everything, but I want to understand better. And if I am wrong, I will say, and stand up and say, I was wrong, right? One of the things about Discover Chocolate, like, it was written in late 2006, published in October 2007, and less than a year later, Montemayor comes up with the his class. There's only Criollo and Forastero, and everything is a subset of everything else. There aren't three types, right? Just completely destroyed, right? The collective wisdom. I'm looking at that book and I'm going, right? I wish I could take it back. I wish I could fix that, but I can't. It's a book and I can't. Anyway, and I've been, trying to do my best to educate people about that in a broader way ever since.
Well, if you want to do that update on your book and come and do a book signing at Indie Chocolate, we will be doing a book signing after the Northwest Chocolate Festival. So anyone that's a book author on either cacao or chocolate is welcome to sell their own books and do a book signing. It's one of the ways that we like to work with the community and foster community.
The book is out of print. I have to buy them one at a time off Amazon. In order for me. So when I give that book as gifts, I have to buy them one at a time off Amazon, hope that somebody else hasn't written in it, right? I once bought a book that I had signed and dedicated to someone else, which is kind of
an interesting regifting.
Yeah, it is that kind of stuff. But I am working on a new book. It's not going to be out anywhere in time. So I'm trying to develop a typology for chocolate and a typology for flavor, and then develop, right, everything out of what comes out of the typology, rather than to force a classification by reverse engineering it, which is what we've seen now. So it's an entirely different approach to that, what's going on. And then a last one from Romy. Hey, Aaron. Romy Burks in Texas. Hey, Aaron, good to see you and Clay. Thanks for the episode. Appreciate the crab metaphor. Want to see collaboration across the industry, but I want to see an industry willing to look at their practices and improve. I'm certainly not in competition with anyone and have known Martin and Maricel for many years. I've also refrained from publicly describing my intense disappointment with the IICCT course level 3 tasting in Peru, having tasted for years. Anyway, it's just, there's maybe a second part to this. So on that note, it's important to understand your mileage may vary, right? That
Absolutely.
the experience you bring into these classes, the expectations you have for the classes, right? Who the instructors are, your relationship with the instructors, the group you're in or not in, the relationship you have with the members of the group or a member of the group. All of these things are going to color your experience of what it is that goes on. And
absolutely. And just like you have said, Clay, is that, you and I have sat in the back of bumpy buses for hours upon hours. That experience of being somebody, I source cacao for my company. That experience of sourcing really you have to have a flexible mindset when you're at origin, because no matter how good your plans are, something is going to change. A road will wash out. You'll be stuck in the mud. Somebody's mother-in-law needs surgery. All of those things happen. And so it's always a kind of regrouping and doing the best you can with what you've got. Yeah.
There's no alternative airport for an emergency landing. which is where we were in 2013, which revolved in perhaps one of the most miserable bus rides of my life. Right. But who else was on that trip? Kristen Hard was on that trip.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've been on so many of those. I'm trying to remember which one that one was. Yeah. But,
that was the overnight. That was the overnight trip from Lima, where it took us 3 hours to drive out. By the way, that's a story in and of itself. In case anybody, at some point, perhaps during Geek Week, people can share, right, and somebody can record their craziest stories craziest stories in producing countries. But but the point that I will end up with, right, which is to follow on with what it is that you just said, Aaron, which is one of the most important lessons I learned when I was in Bolivia in 2010 with Volker Lehmann. I was there twice, right? In the early part of the year, I went to the Hacienda Tranquilidad, so I'm flying from New York into Lima, into Santa Cruz de la Sierra, and then taking an overnight bus to this little town called Trinidad, no relation to Trinidad, then getting in a little tiny plane and finally flying to Baures and getting into a truck and then driving to the Hacienda Tranquilidad. And then maybe not being able to get back to Trinidad because of the weather, and then just all that kind of stuff. And that was in 2010, right? But in a very, very short period of time after that, I got to go to Ecuador, I got to go to Peru, and all of these things. And I realized, and for anybody who's going to get in this business, it's the fundamental understanding. No, it's a fundamental place from which you need to approach people and farmers wherever you go. Absolutely. Which is what you think you know about the cocoa and chocolate culture in another country has no bearing about the cocoa and the chocolate culture in the country you're in. They could be neighbors. Absolutely. Bolivia and Peru are neighbors. Ecuador and Peru are neighbors, right? What you think you know about Peru, which has had a huge hand, right, laid down on by USAID, right, and to try to interdict cocoa farmers into being their cocoa farmers. And by the way, the person who oversaw all that investment is a friend of mine, right? Which has led to some really, really interesting conversations about how to do things and how not to do things, right?
Where I started was you were there when we were kicking off Cotton Tree Chocolate. And one of the things that Cotton Tree, and one of the things that was really fascinating is that there's a clonal garden there started by Flo Reed of Sustainable Harvest International. Yep. And she was a former Peace Corps volunteer. And one of my most, I think, exquisite luck and alignment came from starting when she was there and having a very in-depth conversation with her, in that the understanding from that I carry forth in every way is that I will never have all the answers. I should never present myself as far as having all of the answers. I might be able to share what I've seen others do, but really the key component is respecting the farmers, giving them pride and giving them value for what they do well. And I would have to say intense and intentional since I first started. And I still learn every time something on a cacao farm, every time I'm there. And I am so incredibly thankful for that.
Right. So I was fortunate in 2007 to go down to Belize, to Punta Gorda with Jeff Pizzina, right, who was one of the co-founders of Cotton Tree Lodge. But being there for the Toledo Cacao Growers Association, when it was being overseen by Green and Blacks, and I'm just escaping on the name of the Gregor Hargrove, right, who was the representative. But what happened was Green and Blacks had a full-time representative down there to ensure that whatever the fair trade policies were being implemented, whatever the—
and those were the best policies of all time. Full stop.
But
yes,
but the aspect of that which is really important to me, which I took away from this, and when we, for example, we think about direct trade and things like that, but it ends up being the personal, long-term, in-person commitment, right?
Absolutely.
So when Craig Sampson, his wife Joanne, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Oh yeah, Chris and Joe. We gave them their domain name from Cotton Tree Chocolate, actually. Yeah,
gotcha.
We had that.
Sold to Kraft. That's what got lost. The commitment. Gregor passed away around that time, and they didn't.
I remember that. I was there. Right. Yeah.
But
then they got bought by Cadbury, and then they got bought by Mandela's. And I can tell you from being on the ground there, I can tell you the difference of why I'm a supporter of specialty chocolate over industrial. And there's a world of difference. Yes. It went from the best contracts ever of all time to nothing. Yeah.
Right. And it was the personal commitment of Craig and his wife, Jo, who made that, said, this is going to be, even though the cacao, which went into their, whatever the name of the
Maya
bar
Gold
was.
Bar.
The Maya Gold Bar. It was only a fraction of the cocoa that they bought, right? It was really, really important.
Later, it became less and less so until it was non-existent. Yes.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about the entire portfolio of Green and Black's bars. All of the chocolate for all the cocoa for all of their bars did not come from Belize, right? It was concentrated in the Green and Black, in the Maya Gold Bar. But to wrap it all up and come at this, I think, from the important way, and it may be what Sophie is responding to here, right? And it just, I am going to spend a little time, but more than a little time, thinking about this, is that if you are sourcing cocoa, if you are going to go into a producing country, which I prefer to origin country, producing country, and consuming country, producing and consuming, they're non-judgmental, right? Terms, they're neutral terms, right? Is you need to come from a place of humility, not hubris. Right?
Absolutely.
If you think, you who know nothing about the biology of a fermentation pile, believe that you can go to teach a farmer in another country about how to ferment properly, right? You're approaching the entire enterprise from the wrong point of view, right? I can say the things that I say in the way that I say them because I have more than 25 years of experience, right? That I can base my observations in. And that experience is the fine arts, high technology, and chocolate. And I try to embrace all of those things or incorporate all of those things in what it is that I do. And sometimes I come across forcefully because I really believe in these kinds of things and why they are important.
Well, it's our passion, right? You and I both do this because we're absolutely in love and passionate with what we do. And we know the good stories and we know the good people. And we want to see them both thrive and survive.
And we know the bad stories and the bad people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. But Erin, thank you very much for agreeing to be a part of this. Thank you to Romy. Thank you for Sophie for their comments. I will take them to heart. And I hope that what we've done today, I have done today, Erin, you've done today, everybody who's been a part of this, have modeled a way to say we can be in disagreement about things at a fundamental level, and we can be passionate about the things we disagree about, right?
Well, I like to say the perfect husband is a bachelor, right? there's always that nothing is perfect and there's always room for improvement. Is that,
but what I will say, Aaron, where I was going with this, right? But because we share this common goal, right? And I'm not challenging anybody about what that common goal is. You want to help grow specialty chocolate, public awareness, the appreciation, the connoisseurship, all that kind of stuff. Let's find a way to work together. We can passionately disagree about how any of us is doing this, right?
Which is a joy that we are strongly opinionated people, right? And that keeps the dialogue alive. Yes.
Well, but it's also a personality thing. And I could tell you, I had a specific experience when I was in my first high-tech startup in 1984 with a coworker who was an American who had spent several years in the Israeli Defense Force, right? And this guy, incredibly talented, right? But incredibly combative. Right. And if you wanted to work with him, you just needed to figure out a way, right, around that aspect of the personality. So talented, it's so much to give, so much understanding. But, and this is the point, if what you say is, well, this guy is being a jerk, I am going to close my ears and not listen to them. Right. That's where I could certainly mediate the way I talk to people, right? But there needs to be an agreement. We all want to get to the same place, which is what do we do to grow the industry, right? And we have different personalities. We have different constituencies. We have different businesses. We're appealing to different people, right? How do we work together in order to improve everything that we're doing? Because ultimately
is Geek Week, and that is bringing strongly opinionated people together in a place where we're all adults, and we're there to learn from each other, not necessarily be in complete agreement. Yeah.
So Aaron, send me details about Geek Week. I will post them on the Chocolate Life.
It's a hand selected. We will rotate our guests. It's something I'm putting together. It's not a for-profit. Okay. It's not a for revenue. It's literally about my own learning
So in other words, it's not an open attending event. It's an invitation. No,
it's a small private. Well, the super geeks.
Privately send me details. Privately send me details. Okay. Privately send me details. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
If my calendar is open and you want to extend an invitation, I will. Excellent. I will open it up in my calendar. I have a sister
we are already committed for this year, but we are not yet committed for next year. Yes.
All right. So happy to understand. And I may have stuff to share. I will have a lot more to share on my typology.
Excellent.
Right. And which could be interesting. In which case I want to say thank you everybody for being here. Like, subscribe, do all the things. Go to thechocolatelife.com and say hello and all the other kind of stuff. And until the next time, everybody, remember, if you're working with chocolate and you are not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Ciao. Thank you again, Aaron.
Thank you, Clay, for being an educator and bringing us all together. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Right. Bye.